All right, welcome to episode 107 of The Worst People We Know. I'm Jeff.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Mike.
In this week's episode, we're talking TikTok being out of time, but possibly not out of luck. Virgin Hyperloop hits a milestone, and another delivery app is going public. But the thing we were just talking about before we started off air, and we're going to continue talking about, is the new, what is it, a Twitter replacement? Parler, if you've heard of this.
Twitter without
My understanding is that it is
censorship.
more Twittery than Facebooky. Yeah, without censorship.
Yes, exactly. With all that terrible censorship. So it was started by obviously like right wing. Yeah. Or maybe it wasn't. Honestly,
I think it is
It
because they only censor two things. One is nudity and one is pornography, which makes me feel like it's like
which Twitter doesn't censor, by the way.
Right. Well, they don't really. Twitter doesn't really censor anything. They just they're putting up fact checking.
Put a filter.
There's very few things that they actually fully impede.
Yeah,
true.
Yes,
true.
If this is going to negatively affect the continuation of democracy in the country by which we are incorporated and founded, those are the things that will at least inform you this may not be true.
Have you seen
the pretty soft filter?
I've seen some pretty good memes though about like their warning or whatever they put up, where it's like, this disagrees with the public discourse or whatever they're saying. They're basically saying, check the facts on this. I do quite like, I've retweeted a couple things without reading the article, like based on just the headline. And they ask me, would you like to read the article before you retweet this? Which of course I don't. I mean, how am I supposed to spread false information if I'm sitting there reading articles?
What do you think I'm doing here, guys? I'm trying to get this out here.
But I thought that was kind of clever. At the same time, so I saw like, people are doing like Galileo, the Earth, the Earth rotates around the sun, and Twitter has this does not agree with the current understanding of how
this claim about the election fraud is disputed is the one that's on Trump's.
Yeah, there you go. So it's not necessarily always a good thing, but the reason it started certainly does seem to be good. When our president's tweeting out just blatantly false information.
Well, what I think is funny is the Parler does have censorship and is somewhat restricted, and Twitter really isn't at all, but they're selling it like it is because it's just certain people don't like getting their misinformation flagged. So it's like selling itself as a misinformation zone, and that works until it's huge. If it becomes the size of Twitter, then they have to do that.
Yeah.
So it's
then
like
you're done, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. So there's something called Mastodon, which is like, it's supposed to be the open source free, not even free because Twitter's free, but like the open source, completely like user run version of Twitter. Now, the way it works though is that everyone has their own server. So it's basically kind of more like Reddit, where you subscribe to a channel or a server, and then that person sort of has rule, but you can always start your own and say whatever you want, and but you don't get all of them. You only get what's on your server. So it kind of it's not really like Twitter in the fact that like the whole point of Twitter is that everyone's on it and you can hear everyone.
Yeah. Reach and discovery. Yeah, that's the thing that like makes me, part of me is like, this is another like segmentation of America, or people are going to be in their own echo chamber, but it's like, it's really the people that you're concerned about are like the people who are kind of independently ignorant and being influenced by the crazies. If all the crazies want to go into their own world, have at it. right? And actually, there's an episode of that, what's that show with the Always Sunny guy that's on Apple Plus? Mythic Quest?
Mythic Quest, yes.
Yeah. So there's an episode where there's a group of neo-Nazis inside of like the concept of Mythic Quest is that they're running this multiplayer online game that's like a I don't know, knights killing each other with dwarfs and like, Legend of the Rings type world.
Yeah.
And there's some guild of people who are neo-Nazis. And so they figure out how to get them all onto their own independent server where they're away from everybody else. And they're like, yeah, great. Go be Nazis in Nazi land. Who gives a crap what you guys are doing over there? Just go hate each other and murder each other over there. Have a good time.
That's a great idea. Yeah. Well, and that's true.
And they called it Parler. But it's like, I mean, 4chan. Which one is Q on? I want to know which one.
Where
that guy is.
I think they're everywhere.
Yeah, where's Q?
I think Q just when you see like a movie and like a hacker just comes up on your screen, but it's not through anything. Like I feel like that's how Q must communicate. It's just
like a pop up.
Who's got the best
pop up IE
which
window?
Of the does 4chan or does Parler have better intel on the pedophilia rings? That's
definitely
question, right?
4chan, I would imagine. 4chan probably contains actual pedophilia rings. Like that's the thing with 4chan. But yeah, the Parler thing, whatever. I'm not really even opposed to the idea of these types of things popping up. There should be competition. There should be different versions of Twitter, Facebook, all of these things. The issue is like Parler, I think it looked like a blatant ripoff of Twitter, and that's not really pushing anything forward necessarily. It's just
so if you Google Parler, PARLER.com, the first hit that comes up and like what the title of their search tag is Parler, free speech social network.
Finally.
Parler is an unbiased social media focused on real user experiences, engagement, free expression without violence, and no censorship.
So
boom.
I will say, and while I don't think Twitter in particular or any of these have like a huge issue with this stuff, like my problem with a lot of these people that say Twitter and Facebook is censoring the right is they're censoring the farthest right that is saying ridiculous things. And maybe they're not doing that to the furthest left. I think that's probably a fair argument to have.
Oh, hug everybody and love everyone so much.
That's not the furthest left.
That's not the furthest left.
It's defund all the policemen and burn the buildings down.
Hugs,
and
not bombs.
Hugs, not bombs would be great. So I guess, but my issue is like, these people are violating the terms, like blatantly, constantly, and then they complain that they're being censored. And it's like, well, voice your opinions, stop spreading hate, and stop threatening people, and you won't get censored anymore.
Yeah. Well, it's like, my friend Stephen Colbert said when he did the White House Correspondents' Dinner, we all know that reality has a liberal bias. And so it's like, if you're going to tell a bunch of fucking lies, I can see how you could observe that as, bias against, the conservative, like, disinformation network. And it's not that, conservatism is wrong. It's that there happens to be a very effective propaganda machine that tends to be conservative. And they say a lot of bullshit.
Did you see the guy that bankrolled that propaganda machine recently came out and said he kind of regretted what he did?
Who is that?
That Koch?
Yeah, Koch, isn't it?
Oh, really?
Koch. Sorry, Koch.
Yeah,
Koch there were two brothers, only one
I did not see
still
that.
alive.
Yeah.
What did he say? This is a disaster?
No, I think he just realizes the divide in the country now. And that wasn't necessarily his intention.
Yeah,
it probably
he's
was
making an effort.
Yeah,
and then
he's like 85 years old, so he's trying to make peace with. He's like, I didn't really mean. I didn't mean to destroy the world before I died, but
yeah. I mean, so he's 85, and he's kind of, and so maybe he has some real regret. I don't know, but like over the last 2 or 3 years, he has been making an effort to, maybe adjust his legacy and how he's viewed in the world. He was interviewed on Freakonomics, and that was one of the first places where he's talking about free markets, and he comes off incredibly reasonable.
Is this
like the
recently?
Entire time? Oh, it's within the last 18 months.
Okay.
And sounds incredibly reasonable, and he has some policies that are some people would say would be liberal in a certain way, but really they're like it's consistent with his sort of libertarian ethos and government waste, like prison reform. He's in favor of prison reform because he thinks that we just spend way too much money on incarcerating people on things that could be treated in better ways. And he tries to kind of position that so he's like, hey, I'm not just this partisan, but at the same time he's funded for decades this red meat, like the worst possible, like CPAC conservative engine that created a lot of this division. So unclear whether or not he's just trying to buy his way into heaven after he's dead, or if he actually is like, that maybe was not the best way. But he's saying like he has some misgivings about the way he went about pursuing his own agenda.
The quote in this article is, or from his book, quote, "Boy, did we screw up. What a mess." Yeah, well, I don't know. It is one of those things where I think they probably saw an opportunity to go this way, and then it was maybe too successful, and now he does regret it because it's kind of the same thing with social media, right? Like, hey, let's give everyone everything they want at all times. What could go wrong? Yeah. Those people will love it. Well, this is what happens. Everything goes wrong.
They do really love it. That's the problem.
really, really love it.
Maybe a little bit too much freedom. So, but I will just read, just for people who are less familiar with Parler, the first paragraph of the Wikipedia article. Parler is an American microblogging and social networking service launched in August 2018. So far, so good. Parler has a significant user base of Trump supporters, conservatives, and right-wing extremists. Sentence 3. Posts on the service often contain far-right content, anti-Semitism, and conspiracy theories. Well, this is getting worse. Parler has been described as an alternative to Twitter and is popular among people who have been banned from mainstream social networks or oppose moderation policies. That's paragraph 1.
Ban. Perfect.
10 million users. 10 million users as of this month.
That's not terrible.
They only have 30 employees, so that's pretty impressive.
That is pretty impressive. Well, I think they literally... That is my question. I wonder, like, if they were building a Twitter alternative and, like, they were just like, this is a great way to launch it, because it is. It is a great way to get 10 million people on. I mean, what was the steal... Stop the Steal was the fastest Facebook group ever. And then they shut it down because there was some random threats or something.
Yeah, 300,000 people in like 27 hours or something like that, and some people threatened to hang people, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, maybe we'll get this. That's actually pretty good systems work on Facebook to be able to find something that fast.
Very true. Yeah. Well, social media. In other social media news, should we move on to a bigger, more dancing related social media?
Yeah. Twerking, any twerking news here, Sean?
TikTok, we've covered them a lot lately, and then I think we finally got tired of trying to figure out what the story was, but it started...
it kept changing daily.
It started...
You know what I haven't asked, which is interesting, is TikTok, is that big in the core Bootyworks community?
Good question.
It's not. I don't know anyone that uses it. Instagram, I know people that use that, and I did see Instagram basically has now added TikTok to... If you scroll through your feed, you get
they call it something
TikTok
different.
Feeds. It's like,
it's called Reels, but it's
Instagram,
TikTok. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Continue to.
It's attractive young women who doing 15-second dance videos.
Yeah. So TikTok, it started back with Trump banning them, right?
Yep.
And we didn't know what that exactly meant. And I think where we left off the story at some point, they were trying to put together a team of bidders. Microsoft was in the running, some other big tech companies. It was a team of Oracle and Walmart that were selected to be part of the TikTok.
Yeah, they were going to own like 20% of it or something.
And
that
oversee
was the idea.
them. And then TikTok was going to split off another like company underneath it for operations.
It was
in the US.
It was
operations.
a crack team of technologists whose only criteria was you are American, right?
Yeah. Who wants to get involved? Who's got
You're
some money
American,
here?
and maybe you're a donor to the president's campaign funds.
Yeah, that would help.
Yeah, that would help.
Definitely not Jeff Bezos.
But then that like fell apart, I think, and then we kind of just stopped talking about it.
Well, yeah, and I thought when that fell apart, I didn't know that fell apart. I kind of thought that was the deal. Well, apparently, what the Commerce Department said there was some date that they must adhere to all of this by. That has now come and gone, and they're just like, we'll see. We'll see what happens. They're not stopping them from operating.
Yeah.
It seems like this is all because Trump is now more interested in his election and completely has lost interest in this and or the rest of his presidential duties, which isn't terribly surprising.
Well, it makes you wonder what the play was here initially. It didn't make sense to me,
Yeah.
but it might have had something to do with the election. And now it's lost its relevance. Like if there was some...
Right.
I think he was probably on Twitter and he's like, social media is important. And somebody said a lot of people are on TikTok. And he's like, well, I got to start say something about TikTok then.
Yeah.
It's got Chinese people. My base knows I hate them and it's social media and they know I love that. So I got to have an opinion. What should my opinion be? I'm not going to think about it. I'm just going to say it. What does Larry want?
They do say...
His boat came by one of my courses recently.
You know who should own more social media? Walmart. That's who I want to own more social media. The article does say, this is an article from the Wall Street Journal, it does say that ByteDance, which is the corporate owner of TikTok, is still working to reach an agreement with the U.S. government. So it sounds like things are still kind of going along, but it also sounds like this administration doesn't give a shit anymore. They were probably only doing it
just
because
like an executive
Trump was
order.
asking. Yeah, right.
So like they're just waiting for that to kind of expire, it seems like.
Yeah. And we'll see what Biden does. I mean, he'll probably reverse it, although I'm not even sure. I don't disagree with Trump on this
one. They give
one.
his
I
son
don't
Hunter
have a problem
a suitcase of cash from the mayor of ByteDance. Then
everything would be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've talked about like Chinese technology and sensitive information and Russia in the past, right? I can think of like there was a Russian company that did like the face recognition and that was scary. And then there was another Chinese company that had a lot of payment information from people staying in hotels, which is interesting, information that could be sensitive, particularly for powerful people who could be blackmailed because they're taking prostitutes to their hotels.
Or even like government people, right? You don't really want...
for security concerns. Where are they going to be and how are they going to be there? Whatever. Yeah, like reservations. But I still don't understand what the national security concern is for our 18 to 24-year-olds and their 15-second dances.
So communicating messages out of China through the dance moves, I think. That's
that's
Oh.
what it is. Through the dance
There was
moves.
a Simpsons episode about that where it was like they
Simpsons
started a boy band with Bart, and it was like the song that they had backwards was "Join the Navy" or something.
Yes. I forgot about that. Yes. So, I guess my thing with TikTok is more like, okay, China more or less takes all of our intellectual property, steals it, redoes it in their country. This one is theirs, and they, it's more or less Instagram stories, but in somehow a different way. It's gone a different direction, and it is its own thing.
So in this story, Zuckerberg is the Jin Yang.
Yes, exactly. New TikTok. That's what we're starting. Well, it really is, and somehow Zuckerberg's doing
Eric
this
is so fat,
all so blatantly, and allowed to get away with it. But I think my not necessarily issue with it, but at some point we're going to have to stand up to China, literally stealing things and putting them out. If they want to play on the world stage, they have to play by the rules of everyone else in the world. And like, where are we going to take that stand? This isn't a bad place to take it. It has to happen at some point. Otherwise, they just continue to do, like, completely have no respect for any intellectual property in the rest of the world, but then the Chinese apps can be disseminated, and it's just an unfair playing ground for everyone. And because they do so much manufacturing, no one wants to piss them off. But at some point, we kind of do have to piss them off. And Trump seemed like a perfect person to do that because he's good at pissing people off. But he seems to have lost interest.
Yeah, he's got no follow through. Like that's the
yeah, that is true on most of these things, right? I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, do you guys disagree with that?
I'm going to say the same thing, but through a San Francisco liberals sort of angle on it, which is there are clearly elements of the Chinese regime that do not share our values for pluralism and democracy and freedom. And, part of accessing our markets and tapping our wealth should be moving towards social justice.
Or at least some level of respect for those ideals, right? They don't have to follow them, but they at least have to respect them on our side.
Yeah, and if you want, I think it's like, realistically, it's difficult to separate fair and justice-aligned capitalism without democracy. Like, those things are intertwined to some extent,
right?
Or they should be. Like, you if you have the freedom to decide the government that you live under, and you have the freedom to be able to go about pursuing your own prosperity, like, you should also have the protection of not having your intellectual property ripped from you and like from a nation.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just like something that you need these governments to work out at the top because of their power and the power structures and how top down China is. And so there does need to be, like, I think people have been kind of happy with détente for a long the government leaders, of just like, we get cheap labor from you, we don't say anything, or we kind of just like let your human rights go, we give lip service to you shouldn't like do these terrible things, but hey, as long as the iPhones keep coming, we're not going to be too serious about it. And where things have to shift, right? They need to move more towards freedom for all people in the universe. Now, I don't think Trump's necessarily the person to do it. He's certainly not doing it for any reason other than himself, because he's, a dumpster fire of a human being. But this is an area where potentially we can say, listen, we'll use this as a leverage point to have the discussion that we need to have.
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm feeling. It's the first purely Chinese app that has kind of taken over the rest of the world, or the Western world. I can't think of another one that's like WeChat, but that's mainly for Chinese speakers, so that doesn't really apply to most people, or here anyway. I don't know. Sean, do you have different thoughts on all of this?
No.
Perfect.
Okay,
perfect
then.
Alignment. No, but like, so China manufacturing, right, for sure, and they buy a lot of U.S. agriculture, so they have that as a lever. So we want them to make our stuff cheap and well, and we want to be able to sell our stuff to their billion people and their, millions of millionaires.
Yep.
But yeah, like, what else do they do besides manufacturing and 15-second dance videos? Anything?
I
think that's pretty much the big stuff. Yeah.
That sounds, just as I said it, just felt so racist. It's purely ignorance. It's not intended to minimize the entire culture of people.
That wasn't racism. That was on a world level. What is China doing?
I'm trying
for
to
the
talk
US?
about.
Yeah,
it's like,
I don't think that's bad.
I'm trying to talk
wooden
about
shoes
like,
and
the global
windmills. Countries are just known for things.
Yeah. Well, that's the Bugle podcast. They talk about that. They're like, oh, yeah, well, we could be Belgium, or the country that only cares about waffles and chocolate. Prove us wrong. Prove us wrong. So I'm not trying to minimize.
They do both of those things very well, though.
Yeah.
But
culture or contributions of China, but I am trying to contextualize it, the interaction between the U.S. and China on an economic basis.
What your argument is for the intervention in TikTok is that what you're saying Trump was doing, or what you think could be a benefit?
Are you talking about me or Jeff?
I think you guys were both saying it's similar. This is like good thing to pick on them for, but I didn't get the sense that was like what.
I think it's kind of what Trump is doing, in a less
like calculated way, or like a
calculated or global way. It's more of a selfish way for him, but I think it still serves the same purpose in that China. He just didn't like China meddling in our affairs because he is, very xenophobic or whatever you want to call it. And I don't agree with that reasoning, but I do agree. Like most of the time when he's calling everything's unfair, it's unfair, we're getting screwed, yada, yada, yada. It's all a bunch of bullshit because we're the most powerful nation in the world. We're not getting screwed if we don't want to get screwed. And so, but with China, it's getting to the point where we kind of are, and it's not necessarily that we're getting screwed because obviously
it's
worth it
doing
to us.
Anything particular.
No, it's just the first.
It's
the first easy thing to draw a line in the sand. So if TikTok survives and we still allow them to steal intellectual property, then it's kind of like, okay, well now they have an in. Now it's just like, okay, well you let us do this in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the issue with, you go through all the legal, the courts and stuff. It's always precedent, right? So this would be an easy place to draw a line and set precedent. Like, if you guys want to do this, that's great. We encourage globalization, but you also have to play by these rules. And that's my only argument. That's what I think. It just seems like an easy place to do it. And if we don't do it here, it's not going to get easier, kind of thing.
But it's not like TikTok is stealing intellectual property.
No, I'm not actually worried about TikTok.
Of the same
government. I don't know. There's a dance called the Harlem Shuffle, and there's a very similar dance called the Shanghai Shuffle.
Well, so I don't actually think there's an issue with having our kids' dance moves known by Beijing first. Maybe they get better at them than us. That would be a problem, for the raves and whatnot. But the bigger thing is not like, it's more like, hey, you need to have some level of assurance that this is a real private institution and it's not giving data to your government for spying purposes. We are pretty okay with every other country, other than maybe Russia, but all other developed nations, we're kind of like, okay, if someone in Britain makes an app, we're not worried that the British government's stealing that to spy on us, even though they may or may not be. Who the hell knows? But with China, you're like, oh, they're definitely doing that. I mean,
yeah.
Well, they're definitely doing
that. The Russian face one was the
right.
Weird. That's
same
what it was,
idea,
right? The face aging, and they were stealing everybody's
face aging. Yeah.
Well,
and even if they're not doing it, we don't believe them that they're not doing it, which is kind of the problem. It's like, we should believe you. You should be trustworthy.
That's why Larry Ellison was going to vouch for them, and everything was going to be good.
The most trustworthy man in America. So, yeah. Anyway.
Where is Dennis Rodman in this? Because he is our top Asian diplomat, correct?
I believe so.
So
was that in Between Two Ferns? Where he asked Obama,
no.
Did you send Dennis Rodman over there?
No, I don't remember that, but it doesn't mean that it didn't happen. That's pretty good.
Oh, God, that show is great. Between Two Ferns, if anyone hasn't seen that. Definitely watch the one with Obama. That was fantastic. Anyway.
Some winners. How do we get places quickly, Jeff?
We get places quickly, not with a Hyperloop yet, but maybe soon. So our next news article here is the Virgin Hyperloop completed its first test with actual human passengers, which is a pretty big deal. The Hyperloop was something conceived in 2012, although technically by Elon with the Hyperloop moniker. The idea is a basically a tube that sends little trains down it. The tube has no air pressure in it. These things can go really fast. It seems like a great idea because the smaller the train cars, they don't have to stop for other stops. They can kind of peel off from the main tube. We're talking San Francisco to LA, which is a 6-hour drive in like 30 minutes, city center to city center. There's
600 miles per hour.
Yeah, some crazy numbers thrown out. Now we're nowhere near that, but this Virgin Hyperloop is one of the first kind of real companies coming along with this. Now, I think Elon wrote a white paper and then said, this is whatever you guys want to do with this, great. And so there's a bunch of companies working on this. Virgin is one of them. They have a test track outside of Las Vegas, and they just sent a pod with 2 people in it. It was I believe the head of like passenger experience and the entrepreneur that started the company. They both rode into the track. It was a half-mile track, I think, and it got up to 100 miles an hour. And they're hoping to like get that up to 200. So we're not talking about crazy speeds, but the fact that their first test with humans in it went 100 miles an hour, faster than I think the large majority of our trains in this country, is promising.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of exciting.
What's the highest speeds that Acela hits? Do you know, Sean?
I think in like the 150s maybe.
I looked it up for this, and it was like 150 something, but it was only for like 65 miles of track on the East Coast or something that, because its average is 60 miles an hour or something like that.
All the stops
it's probably only where there aren't people, so like right through the heart of Baltimore.
Yeah, the fastest. I do know the fastest speeds were like north of New York, so I always would miss that going DC to New York. But it's like somewhere in Connecticut. It's like empty and flat.
Yeah, there's what's the name of that guy who I don't like, who's from MIT? He was in the news recently. He's like the logic or linguistics guy, Chomsky.
Oh, okay. I didn't know he was an MIT guy. Okay.
Yeah, I think he's an MIT guy, but he has this kind of conversation because he's like a million years old, and he's like, I started traveling between Boston and New York by train in 1957, and in the last 40 years, I thought that this didn't get any faster, and I was wrong. In 1957, it took 4 hours and 40 minutes, and now it takes 4 hours and 25 minutes.
Whoa, 15 minutes.
He's like, you guys have done absolutely nothing. So, I'm excited for a 600-mile-an-hour train. Get me on that guy.
One thing that's smart, so I think Virgin also has trains and high-speed rail that they, at least in the U.S., I think they're building a rail line from Vegas to Los Angeles.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So
Virgin is.
I think it's like Virgin's involved in part of the team. They might operate trains in other parts of the world. I'm not really sure, but I think this might be the first one in the U.S. But they'll have that train running there. I don't know when that's supposed to open in the next like 5 or 10 years. It's not even. Maybe construction has started, or maybe it's getting towards that. But I don't think any work's actually started on it yet. But then they could run, if they start operating these high-speed rails, and those will go like 200 miles an hour. Like there's no reason Acela probably could go faster except for all the bends and curves. This, like where you look at where Hyperloop is being tested, is the Nevada desert, and it's just these wide open stretches. You could run a train through there like 200 miles an hour. And then at some point they could also run like Hyperloop along. They've already got like all the land and the right of way running through that. Throw that in as like
that's the hard
business
part,
class,
right?
Yeah, the right of way. Yeah,
buying up all the land, getting the permission to be there. So once they've got that path, they can have like their business class Hyperloop and economy high speed train or something like that. That's a nice little combo.
I like that combo.
Like one of the things that is very interesting about this whole thing to me, and like COVID makes this the same way. So like leave the economics aside of like how much it costs to actually travel on one of these things. One of the things that COVID has brought to light and could have massive impacts on property values is now information workers could largely, many of them can live anywhere, right? And so that changes the dynamics of where companies might locate themselves or choose to locate themselves. It changes the dynamic of where workers have to be. All these concerns about how far you're going to be from work, how does that actually impact your life? How does that travel change things? Like can really affect real estate. And when I was living in Philadelphia, I don't know, at this point, 17 years ago, because I'm old, people were talking about Philadelphia as the sixth borough of Manhattan.
I've heard that, yeah.
It was so expensive to live in Manhattan, and it was so cheap to live in Philadelphia. You could live near 30th Street Station, get on an Amtrak, and it would be 2 hours to Midtown. Mm-hmm. And it could take 2 hours to live in North Jersey to get to Midtown.
Well, that's
so like, yeah, go ahead.
So has someone, I mean, I've taken the train from North Jersey into New York quite a bit. We were probably, on a good day with no traffic, you could probably make it into New York City from Long Valley, New Jersey in 50 minutes? Under like an hour.
I would say 50 minutes to the tunnel, and so however
depending
long
on
you get
traffic.
through the tunnel, depending on when you get there. Yeah.
The train, which I took for a summer, I worked in the World Trade Center the summer of 9/11, right before it, and I took New Jersey Transit train in there every day. It took me 2.5 hours.
You took it to Manhattan, to Hoboken, and switched over to the path?
Yep, I took the Gladstone branch. We switched at
Gladstone P-Pack.
Switched at Newark, or didn't switch because I was going to Hoboken. Took it to Hoboken, switched to the path. That took, I think I was on earlier than that. I think I had to wake up at 5 a.m. to try to make like a 6 o'clock train. Yeah.
So my
like
dad,
that.
This is like one of the things that like I just can't understand about like when I think about like my father's life. Every day, up at 4:30 in the morning, out of the house by 5 to get on the first train from P-Pack, to drive 20 minutes to get to P-Pack Gladstone, to get on the train, to go to Hoboken, to get on the path, to go get off at World Trade Center. And I did it like a few times for interviews, and I was like, I'm wiped.
Yeah.
I'm done.
That's 5 hours a day on the train. And it takes, I mean, like we said, so 50 minutes or an hour, whatever, to 2.5 hours. It makes no sense. It's a better commute because you're not driving, but it's so much longer. And even if you live, I had some colleagues when I was living in the city, I had some colleagues that lived in Summit. That's one of the best train stops you can live on. It's a like 30-minute train straight out of Penn Station, straight to Summit, like if you get the express.
Midtown Express, yeah.
But it's still with leaving your house, even if you live right next door, you're leaving 10, 15 minutes before the train leaves. So you get there early, you don't miss it. You get to Penn Station, you have to get around New York City. It's an hour and a half. No matter what you're doing, like if you're living outside. So Philly was not a stretch. It's like,
it's not crazy.
Yeah,
it's not crazy at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and now think about a Hyperloop. We're like, yeah, I could live in Las Vegas and work in downtown LA.
Right.
That's it. Yeah, 30 minutes in. It's no big deal. I just, now if you're a gambling addict, that's what you need.
That's what you need.
You take all of that money that you would have spent on LA real estate and boom, you plow it right on black.
Oh, yeah.
You're retired, baby. You're good to go.
I think
take that right over the Spearmint Rhino.
The Hyperloop stuff is pretty exciting. I think just because it's a new technology, just because, you could put a high-speed train effectively, in the air where it might be, I don't know, safer or easier to put, through places. It's harder to get train tracks on the ground through places, or maybe, a bridge that supports a full locomotive versus a bridge that supports this Hyperloop thing seems, maybe it's less. I don't know.
I mean, how much does a bullet weigh? Like nothing.
Not a lot.
Yeah. It's
not very much.
It's not still enough to be on the scale.
I am, as somebody who knows absolutely nothing about geology, I am very in favor of digging stuff. Like,
totally.
Underground, way better than overground. I don't have to I always say this about if you look at any neighborhood visually that has power lines that are above ground, if you put those underground, you're like, well, you just raised property values by 50% because it went from looking like a complete train wreck in this neighborhood to.
I think it depends on the neighborhood,
underground.
though. Like, I really like seeing them in San Francisco everywhere. LA
For
I see
the
them
trolleys.
and they have it for the trolleys, but then all the lines are
Not
just
everybody's a rail fan.
out. Versus if you took San Francisco and hit all the lines, it would look like Sesame Street, right? or Friends, where they'd be on a studio set and pretending
It's
it was
just fake,
outside
you're
in Manhattan.
thinking?
Yeah, it doesn't look real.
I
Like
don't know. I see what you're saying, but I still
a
think
suburban
I'd prefer
neighborhood, if you had like power lines going through it, I agree. Like that's different. But like I think it depends on the area.
But you're talking nostalgia, right? You're talking like, oh, this looks cool because this is kind of how it is and how it was.
Yeah. And it reminds us, like, this is all the stuff, like, we're just going to hide all this stuff out of sight and not worry about it. Like,
it's just like wireless internet.
yeah.
Like,
Exactly the idea. Yes. Just don't worry about it. Just get rid of it.
yeah.
Look at it.
Yeah.
Roads, the same
have
thing.
no idea where
I just
anything
think
comes
about
from.
how much my house would be worth if they were able to dig a tunnel and do like a big dig like they did in Boston, and everything 101 in San Francisco, all of it was underground.
Yeah.
How much better would San Francisco
so
be?
much better.
First of all, yeah, like you would open up so much real estate on both sides of where that highway is that would be usable, that would be worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
It's significantly more expensive, as you might imagine, to like build something underground.
Build a tunnel underground.
Versus above ground, and there's a lot of challenges.
I've watched 2.5 episodes of City on a Hill. It takes place in the 90s in Boston, so I know all about the big dig.
Wow, that's crazy. So wait, so that is I didn't realize that took place in the 90s in Boston during the Big Dig, which I feel like is a modern thing, but I guess not that modern anymore. God, we're getting old.
Well, Sean worked on the Big Dig, right? And like the Big Dig,
you dug that whole thing.
Your company worked. On
my
the Big
company
Dig.
worked on towards like the very end. It took a long time to build, for sure.
Well, it
heard.
famously is a project that was 100% over time and 200% over budget, and you still
More
look at
than
how
that,
much
yeah.
it costs, and you're like, well, if you tried to do it today, it would be 10x whatever that was.
Right.
It was like great investment.
But,
like it doesn't matter how much over budget it was, it still was a great
They're
investment.
doing another one in Seattle. They're doing what you basically are talking about with 101 in San Francisco. 101 on San Francisco used to go on a Embarcadero Freeway, which is a viaduct all the way along Embarcadero and continue up Golden
What's
Gate
a
Bridge.
viaduct?
It's a elevated roadway structure.
Oh, okay.
So it's a bridge, but
Gotcha.
it doesn't bridge anything.
Right.
It's just like a stacked roadway. So similar like an aqueduct, but that's carrying water instead of people. So that collapsed in
Instead
the
of Vs.
earthquake, in like 91, 92, when was that?
6, 7.
Earlier.
Yeah.
It was during...
Maybe you're right. 90.
So that collapsed, and they just never restored it. So 101 just kind of
87.
meanders through San Francisco and stops being a freeway for a while, and then like inside and outside it is. So Seattle, they're doing the same thing. They've got a viaduct currently that they're afraid it's going to fall down if they have a big earthquake. So they're digging through the city. But I think for a year, their tunnel boring machine, it got stuck, which is just like this big drill that drills through the earth. It got stuck, and it took them like a year to get it moving again. So it's like it's not and they had done years and years and years of planning. So I think it took a year to get it going again.
It kind of
And
makes me feel better about the state of my current business, where it takes me 4 years to build a website, because I'm only one guy, right? There are a whole team of people running this thing, and it took them a year to get something unstuck.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, you can imagine how it would happen, right? And like you just think about the Millennial Tower in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Built one building. It's like, it's leaning over. That's a pretty big problem.
Yeah, that's true.
That thing tips over, it's going to hit another building, and all of a sudden, people are going to be very unhappy about the situation.
It's very true. Seattle could use it though. Their traffic. The last couple of times I've been there, it's just a complete disaster.
It's
like even getting in at
the
3
problem.
p.m.
It's not going to help. It's just replacing of the road that's going to fall down. So
Perfect.
Perfect. But
how many lanes
It'll
should you
still be
do?
terrible. It'll just be
the
underground.
Seattle waterfront area should be beautiful after the old viaduct's taken down, and they're supposed to redo
That is nice.
That's something.
all of that. So that should be nice place to go on a vacation. Maybe when vacations are allowed again.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Nice place to put a Hyperloop.
So if there is one business that we love second most to scooter businesses, I would say it's delivery and logistics businesses.
It's a love-hate, but
yeah. Are the second best company in the restaurant space with the initials DD, DoorDash, has filed for an IPO, and they're showing profitability. So their public filing says that they could begin trading by mid-December, and for the 3 months ended in June, the company had $675 million in revenue and a profit of $23 million, which is almost 3% of revenue.
Wow.
In the quarter ended.
Is that?
I also don't understand
where do they
how the
put
revenue.
the Prop 22 funding in those calculations? Is that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think that they put that in the next quarter that ended in September, where they had $880 million in revenue and a net loss of $43 million. So that's where that goes.
Incredible. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense that most of their revenue goes straight to the drivers, right? I mean, that is kind of the whole point. But that's a lot of revenue.
They may also have like one of those weird things where like Eventbrite, I think, has this where technically it's like, oh yeah, this is our revenue, but then we pay 80% of it out to the organizer because it's really the organizer's revenue. So like it's the same thing with like our revenue is somebody makes an order through our platform for $100 worth of food. It's DoorDash's revenue, but it's not really DoorDash's revenue.
Do you think they count their like the meal? You're saying?
Like if they count the meal, the price.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. In the actual revenue number. And so like, there's like, it's their profit, like that 23 million shouldn't really be off 675. That 23 million should be off of fees, which would be a much higher percentage.
Yeah, that's a good question. Cause Priceline did that and still does that. Now they're booking.com or whatever, but, and I think Expedia does the same thing where they have bookings, which is like total bookings, meaning like airline tickets, prices.
Doesn't the revenue have to be their fee, not their...
I would think it would have to be money going to them, but they might have a deal. If they had a deal with the restaurants that they took the money in and then paid them out, that would still count as revenue for them. And then the expense would be to the restaurant. That is doable.
Yeah.
Like a legal,
situation.
Yeah, it seems weird. The look on your face.
Can we get our accountant on the form?
It was the look
on the phone to look through our.
That was the look I had on my face when somebody explained what revenue meant at Eventbrite as well. I was like, that doesn't seem like that's what it should be.
Did you just pick that number because it's the biggest of all numbers that you saw? Or?
Yeah. So you say whatever our revenue is, I should multiply it by 2%, and that's what our real revenue is?
Yeah.
Okay. And then our profit is 80% of that.
But even if it's not that, they're still paying most of your fee as DoorDash, like the actual DoorDash fee should go towards the driver, right? Yeah. It's kind of the same with Uber and Lyft, right? You're 70 or 80% is going right to them, as it should, because they're the ones doing the work.
Yeah.
So but almost $1 billion in revenue in one quarter and a loss of $43 million.
Well, they keep sending me $5 off coupons. That's the only time I use their service. So it's kind of makes sense to me. Like, and I have Dash Pass through my credit card, so they couldn't have gotten much money out of me for that one. So they waive all their fees and they send me coupons.
So it is so interesting to me because, and like I put these 2 bullet points in our outline because if you're like talking about, well, who is the customer for DoorDash, right? They're a marketplace, so they're 2-sided. So they have the diner customer, and then they have the restaurant customer. And this delivery service for the restaurants and delivery as a concept is critical revenue right now for restaurants because most restaurants in most states can't do dine-in. So if you don't have your own delivery, and even if you do have your own delivery, like these guys are a discovery platform largely. Like it's basically like, you can buy Heinz ketchup online or you can buy it when you go to the grocery store. Most people are in the grocery store. Most people are going to DoorDash or Grubhub or one of these platforms, right? And so like that's the service. But they make so little money, the restaurants, in terms of net. after they have to pay out these guys' fees. So it's like they need this revenue, but profit is almost impossible for them.
Yeah, the whole thing is interesting. And I do feel like when I lived in New York, and this is, 6-7 years ago at this point, but I would order takeout only if you were on Seamless because it was easier. And maybe back then it was
Seamless.
If you were, it was Seamless, exactly. If you were ordering directly from the restaurant, there was just a lot of things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
You had no information. It was like you called them up, you didn't know if they actually took your order or not. No food would show up for 3 hours. There was a lot more problems if you weren't using some sort of app. So that was nice. But now maybe, I don't know, maybe that's different now. Although with COVID, you'd think that you'd get a lot of people on the bandwagon of like, shit, we don't have delivery. We need it in the next 2 weeks. So you're going to sign up with DoorDash, right? I mean, what else would you do?
I've seen some restaurants that aren't on the there's like these middle ground providers that seem like they do the checkout for you, but you have to direct your traffic to them, and they're not as like they lack some of the features. Like there's a pizza place by me I can order on DoorDash, but I'm assuming they also have this other service through their website that they get paid a higher share for, but it has none of the advanced stuff you're talking about, Jeff, with like I like seeing like when the order
and stuff.
Tracking, when should I go pick it up? It's just like, oh, it'll be ready in 20 minutes. And that was just the estimate at the time it guessed. And then you go there and maybe it was ready for like 10 minutes or it's not ready for the next 20 minutes. But I think there are restaurants that are trying to do it cheaper on their own, but it's probably hard because there's no like aggregator to see where they all are. Even if I do ultimately order through like a restaurant website, I'll usually start at DoorDash and then remember, okay, this is oftentimes it's even cheaper if you go to like the restaurant website.
Do you use that? You actually use the DoorDash app?
I go to it sometimes if I'm like, oh, what do I want to eat? And then I'll remember like, okay, I can go to these guys' website and order directly from that. And it's usually cheaper because I think they do the restaurants try and pass on some of the fees. Yeah. So you could go to like their internal site where I'm thinking they're paying like a much lower fee, but it's just they're doing like the checkout for their online ordering. But it's all through their own website. But you'll save a couple of bucks on that. But I'll order through DoorDash. The only time I order, yesterday I got something from them. They'll send me coupons that are like 25% off, $5 off of $20.
Yeah.
Like, and then I'm like,
an Uber situation.
Yeah, this
5
is
years
perfect.
ago.
I don't know what to get for dinner. I'll get
Take
out help the restaurant. Money DoorDash can pay the restaurant, I guess.
Right. Well, that's how 900 million turns into negative 43.
That's right. That's a quick way to do it. You just give it all away in coupons. Right. It's pretty sweet. Well,
yeah,
that's DoorDash.
Yeah,
maybe we'll do a deeper dive on it and go through their S1 and make completely incorrect and ignorant calls about it sometime in the future.
Well, yeah, we should do that because it is interesting in the sense that like I don't have we've talked. I don't think any of our views on the delivery industry are secrets at this point. Like we have pretty negative views on how that succeeds. It just doesn't seem like the economics add up. That said, there's now 3 or 4 of these things being taken pretty seriously. One of them is public, right? Grubhub and Seamless are both owned by the same company. That's a public company. I believe the ticker
Uber
is
Eats is part of a public company.
Uber Eats is part of a public company. I feel like they're so heavily subsidized that I don't take that as a serious, real, maybe not competitor, but like proof of a business model. Now DoorDash will be public.
It's hard, like they don't break it out in a way that would say, okay, this is what this individual business is, right?
Right.
It's like Uber is a pretty diversified logistics company between freight and driver like taxi service and Uber Eats.
Yeah, and I would say that, I mean, just look at Uber itself. Like they could subsidize that for another decade just to see if it works. For no good reason.
Can and will.
Yeah, exactly.
Depending on...
That's their business model.
Depending on how fast...
Well, that's got to be... What's DoorDash's business model? I don't know if we want to get into that much now or save it for later.
Well, that's the whole thing is like...
Yeah,
so now DoorDash and... Did Postmates go public?
Like this. So I'm thinking.
I don't remember
That's a
now.
good
I'm not sure
question.
if it did.
Let's check that.
Like, so remember the COVID, like this is something that's probably booming because of COVID. It'll probably be around for a little bit, but this is like, well, the day after the COVID vaccine was announced, like, the stock market went crazy where it's like, okay, tomorrow's going to be normal again. Hawaiian Airlines went up like 50%. Zoom went down like 30%. And everyone's like, this, like,
Yeah, right. Yeah, the one day.
like, it's like, this is it. And then it's like, things have mellowed back out again. But it kind of feels like this is one, and like even like say take like Zoom, or obviously Hawaiian Airlines will do much better in the future financially when people can travel places, since their core business is flying people around. But like Zoom, people were using that regardless. They're using a lot more now than later, and same with like DoorDash. But the DoorDash, it doesn't seem like nothing ever pencils out for them. Uber, we've talked about, where it's like if they can get to autonomous vehicles, that works. But here we've joked about like drone delivery, and that's like the closest. If you could have like
the drone burrito,
drop, but it's, I don't see what their road is.
No, drone tubes. We're doing the air powered banking tubes throughout a city.
Well, that's combine the Hyperloop with it, get your burrito going at 600 miles an hour.
Burrito Hyperloop.
That then you'll deliver it hot still. That's perfect.
Exactly.
So, like, I like if I'm gonna try and like defend DoorDash, right? Like, how am I gonna figure this out? Autonomous driving happens, so all the 80% that they pay the drivers goes away. All of a sudden, that the economics change dramatically.
Then what? The robot brings it up to my door.
I guess, or you like walk.
Go to the street.
It texts you probably. Yeah, go to the street.
I'm gonna get off my couch.
Yeah.
Oh God!
If the delivery person doesn't buzz in my building, go up the elevator, walk to my door.
I'm not eating.
It's like, why'd I pay for delivery? I could have gone to the store.
I did.
I could have walked out my front door and gone to any one of 7 restaurants across the street.
Leave my couch, man.
I didn't want to get off the couch.
I would definitely get pretty pissed at the Uber, or not the Uber, but the delivery drivers if they're like, "Yeah, I can't find a parking space. Come down to the street."
Yeah.
Fuck you, man.
No.
That's like the whole point is for you to bring this to me. I don't need to track you down.
That actually, I would love to be able to figure out how to do an experiment to be like, okay, this guy has to drive this burrito a mile. How much am I willing to pay for door to, from
See, now that would be different.
Street
and
to here to my door? Like, what is the? Let's start to break that out.
Very good point. Yeah.
Yeah, what do they call that? Dynamic pricing modeling, like where you would say, "Oh, you have to pay more to drive in the fast lane," like in Virginia. It's the same thing. Well, we'll pay this much to deliver it to your curb. We'll pay this much to walk up these 7.
It'll be in your elevator.
So I got it on Saturday. I got I guess it was caviar delivery, but technically DoorDash now. But caviar, I used to get caviar emails.
DoorDash owns
coupons.
caviar?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I still get...
Really?
Yeah.
So hold on. So this is the problem with these things. Because like I also, while you asked that about Postmates, I looked it up. They canceled their IPO and Uber bought
Yes,
them.
I just saw that as well. Yeah.
So Uber bought Postmates. Caviar was bought by Square, and Square sold caviar to whoever the F. You know?
Jesus Christ. Yeah. After Postmates flirted with IPO and 2 SPACs, and Uber failed to grab Grubhub, the 2 companies decided to merge at a higher valuation than previous talks. Okay.
So basically, it's like the economics makes no sense for any of us, so let's all try and buy each other.
So now there's 3 players.
We can't compete.
It's Uber and Postmates, and Grubhub is the public one, and now DoorDash will be the second public one, and they now own
caviar.
Which wasn't that big. But it was pretty popular in certain cities.
Yeah.
And it's a specific segment. It's like upper end markets.
Yeah.
Or,
if you want to pay $100 for delivery, it's going to be a good meal. Not as good as you'd have in that nice restaurant that you ordered from. But, it's going to be expensive.
I have considered several times, like we've been to, there's a really nice steak restaurant in San Francisco called Alexander's, and I've considered getting like a meal for 4 for them delivered, where they deliver all of the ingredients, and you could either cook the steaks yourself or they'll cook them, and like it's like $225 for a meal for 4.
They usually cook it and then you can like sear it or you finish it. I've seen that.
Finish it or something like that. Yeah,
they'll do something. So you can't.
So I've considered doing that as like a special dinner, but I haven't.
That's not something you're doing every night. Yeah.
But yeah, that's where that's where DoorDash makes sense. Like you would, if you're getting that meal, I'll pay $25 to get that delivered to me and done properly.
But like once every 6 months or once every year. So all right. So Sean, what's your story? You ordered from Caviar?
Oh, so I ordered from them because I got a coupon and it was through Caviar for some reason, which confuses me. I think they think I'm still a Caviar user, so they send me DoorDash coupons to convert over. But the guy, he calls me and he's like, he's like reading my delivery instructions to me, like punching in the call box. He's telling me what it says. He's like, I'm trying that, but it's not working. And I was like, okay, I know sometimes it acts up. I'll just come down. I walk down. I see him like walking from his car up the street. So he was calling me as he was like driving.
Yeah.
Saying like, oh, your instructions don't work. He wasn't even at my door yet. I was like,
it wasn't even close.
Yeah.
I had thought about then. I'm like, I left a nice tip like when I was ordering just because like I feel like he's going out of his way. It's COVID times. Like this is nice. And then after that, I'm like, I want to like cut your tip in half. I didn't go back and change it, but that is like half of the journey. It's like, get it to me. And then I'm being lazy.
Well, and I think Flynn's idea there, like if I was to pay for it at the street, that'd be fine. I'd be fine with that. I'd probably pay for that, and that's probably what I would use more. But the fact that it is delivery and the fact that you're like a block or two away from my actual apartment, it's like, okay, well now I have to come down.
There's a standard that I'm paying for here. Now, I almost always do pickup. Even though every place in my neighborhood offers delivery, and it's mostly so that I can get 20 minutes away from my kids.
I like it.
So
I take advantage of the places that I can't really walk to. There's 2 vegan restaurants, one in Westwood and one that's in like Culver City. That would be like too far to walk. So every time I get a coupon, I'm like, boom, boom. Or another one's in. There's 3 of them actually. Yeah. So.
You'll get delivery from it.
I'll get delivery from them because I'm not going to be able to walk there. But yeah. Otherwise, we've got the one story, my favorite place to walk to get food from, Chipotle.
There you go.
I was about to
say.
You
can order on the app. You order ahead. You don't have to worry about like standing in line during these social distance times.
You have said that before, and our next news story here is that Chipotle has opened its first digital-only restaurant where, as you know, it's obviously online orders have soared for them. They're doing like a tremendously larger online business than they used to. But this is in Highland, New York, which is where West Point is. And so unlike traditional Chipotle locations, there's no dining room. There's no line for ordering. You have to order in advance on the Chipotle app or the website or whatever delivery platforms, and then you just go pick it up, and like that's it. And so it's basically what we've been kind of talking about with the cloud kitchen thing. Yeah. It's made for delivery drivers and or people. You know, you don't have to be a delivery driver.
They need like a drive-through for the delivery drivers, but that's probably too hard to like queue up. I don't
know. They might have that. That might be what it is. I don't know.
Well, that's the problem I've noticed. Like the store is set up not for COVID traffic. It's set up for like people to walk in and order, and that's a flow. And then the pickup shelf, like in the store that I go to, it's very poorly configured for picking up things because everyone crowds in this one little corner where the food's put out. But I could imagine if you actually set up a store.
There's no real line. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what's always been so impressive with Chipotle. I feel like, so if you're Five Guys, right, you can cook a burger faster, but with Chipotle, like if you put another person on the line, you could literally double the time, or half the time it takes to get a person through the line.
Yeah.
It's like, it is very much.
I like to order on the app because if you order in real life, it's like happening. It's happening way too fast. Like they've already made the burrito.
Yeah, right.
As you open your mouth, they're like, I know what word's coming out. If you misspeak, it's on there.
Yeah, that is true. That's true. So it is interesting that they can like push through, and I think this is just like another, kind of another example of them sort of focusing on this, where they're like, look. The whole deal is we produce good food and we try to serve it as fast as possible. disclosure, I am an investor in Chipotle. I do own their stock because I bought it.
What do you got? 6-7% of that company?
Oh, at least 6 or 7%, or 6 or 7% of my portfolio. No, probably not even that. But they've done very well for me. I bought them when they were when the E. coli scare happened, and everyone was like, "Oh, no one's
bailed on.
No one's going there. No one's ever going there again." And I was like, "No chance. No one's ever going there." There's like 20 people got sick in the whole country.
It's literally like I didn't realize the brilliance of their business model, living mostly in coastal places. But when you travel to other places, like this is one of the few places that I'll actually eat at. And I think it's true. My brother, I think at some point commented to me, like all the NBA guys like it, like athletes that travel like it because it's somewhat healthy. Like if you're looking for something, it's flexible for anything. Like, and I think you miss that as I don't know that it's anybody's like, I mean, it's plenty of people's first choice, but I think it's so many people's like second or third. Like it's a good option for people, but also just like for me, I'm not going to go like, there's nothing, maybe McDonald's. I think somebody recently sent an article about like fake McDonald's new fake meat product because they weren't using Beyond Meat or something like that. But there's very few places that have like flexible options. And Chipotle, it feels like what Subway used to try and be, where it's like healthy. I think it's probably I don't know if either of them were all that healthy, but they're probably healthier than some of the other options that are out there.
I think
it's real ingredients and you can hold it in your hand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would go there a lot when I was in San Francisco. I mean, at least twice a week because it was pretty
If you went
cheap.
to McDonald's twice a week, you'd feel like, I don't think
you
that would
feel
be
like
the same
garbage.
experience.
But and everyone always commented like, "Oh my God, you must feel like shit. You're eating like a massive burrito twice a week." I'm like, "No, I'm not eating like a massive burrito with sour cream and all of the stuff.
Yeah.
I'm eating chicken and rice and vegetables. Like it's actually a pretty healthy like bowl of stuff that you can get there for cheap. And they do some, they're somewhat trying to source all of their ingredients from like healthy, sustainable, all that stuff. Yeah. So I agree. Like it's like a place you can go anywhere. If you're going to McDonald's, if I'm going to McDonald's, I'm either want to just pig out or I'm wasted. Those are the 2 times I'm going to McDonald's, and it's very rarely.
But it's
whereas
weird.
Chipotle, I think, is doable.
Like, there are I like it when I see the Chipotle model other places, but there's very few times there are very few other competitors to that.
There's that Greek one that you liked that I thought was a good idea.
Yeah, Kava. But they're in DC and there's some in LA. But yeah, they're not in very many places, but it's like the same concept. But you would think more places would and copy off of that model.
Chipotle?
Yeah.
You got
hot, like a grain, a protein, a greens, just like.
I mean, they could put someone through that line in like 30 seconds or 10 seconds if they really wanted to. And I don't think a lot of other fast food places can really say that, even though it's worse food or unhealthy or whatever.
Isn't it? It's like good food fast, not fast food, or is that somebody else's?
That might be someone else's. I don't think that's Chipotle's.
I don't know. Friendly's? Is
Friendly's?
that Friendly's?
Friendly's good food fast.
That place was always the slowest place in the world. I have memories as a child of being at Friendly's for like 3 hours. I'm like, why are we still here?
Dude, you think that you can make that upside down like Conehead ice cream? Like just rip those guys out? That's artwork.
And when is my Conehead Sunday coming?
Pieces guy. Yeah.
Anyway,
should we move to recommendations?
Mine is The Queen's Gambit. Have you guys heard about this show? It's a Netflix show. It's like a miniseries.
It's getting a lot of buzz.
It's
really good. I definitely feel like I heard about it maybe 7 days ago.
So I heard about it a day ago. And we.
No, I feel like you heard about it Tuesday of last week.
Well, okay, yeah, maybe I did. Did she recommend? No, she didn't recommend that, did she?
No, I recommended it to you guys.
Oh, you did? Oh,
yes.
Oh. I didn't pay attention to your recommendation. Well, it's quite good. That's funny. Yeah, no.
Yes. I feel very confident I know the exact day that you heard that.
The funny thing is, that's not where I remember hearing it. I completely ignored it.
Yeah, so what happened?
But anyway, no, that was before I remember hearing of it. And I guess I'll second your recommendation because we watched like 2 or 3 episodes. I think there's a total of 7. Really good. Like sucks you in. I think one of the best TV shows I've seen in quite a while. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah. So my
yes, I also recommend it.
I listened to your recommendation last week, and I've been checking out that show. So that's my recommendation too. Queen's Gambit. But I remembered you recommended it, and I actually watched it because I wouldn't have watched it if you didn't recommend it. It looks like it's like a girl playing chess, and it's like it's like this crazy good show, and there's a girl playing chess. But like the trailer was just like looked boring, like where it's like girls don't belong in the boys' world. It's like that's a story we've already heard. Like it wasn't interesting, but there's much more to it.
Good job with it. Well, and I have to say, I like this new thing, and it makes sense in this world, especially where we're all at home and we can't see movies. But like the new thing where they take something that would probably have been a long movie and they stretch it into 7 hours of series, where you're like, okay, this is getting more to be like a book where there's a lot more to explore.
It's like all the Harry Potters kind of at once, or
right.
And you can digest them, but then it's over too, which I like, because some TV shows just try.
Exactly.
They're like, oh, we need to come up with another season because we're getting good ratings and we need to keep making money off. It's like, well, what? There's no more.
That's like more of a European thing, where like in England, like The Office, the English version of The Office was like 24 episodes. That was it.
That's all we need to do.
Whereas we're like, nope, we got to go 9 seasons in the U.S.
Simpsons, 31 seasons. Money.
Well, that was I'm trying to think of like a good example of that. Billions is probably a good example. The first episode or the first season, I feel like they had a real solid idea of where they were going. They did it, and then they were like, "Well, we just got to keep doing it."
They just keep flip-flopping. Like who's going to fight this season? They got to like cue it all up and train you. It's like, okay, these guys are enemies this season. They were friends last season. Tune in to see what happens.
Well, Jeff's recommendation from, if not last week, the week before, was the Chappelle, where he was on David Letterman's show on Netflix. Oh, that was your recommendation.
I watched that too this week.
So I started watching that because I had been like, I like that show, but it's not something I'd go to. But because you both had seen it and said, yeah, that one was a good one. So I was watching that, and I completely forget what I was going to say about this, but like Chappelle, what were we just talking about before with Chappelle?
Chappelle shows different seasons.
Walking away from a popular show.
Oh yeah, he talked about that.
Yeah, he's like, and they cut to one of his specials where he's like, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but when you walk away from a successful show, the reaction is not like, well, Dave, good luck with future endeavors. It's like there are lawsuits. There are a lot of things to deal with afterwards.
That was a hell of a thing. Like, I feel like he should write a book about that at some point or do something with it where he actually tells the real story, which he really hasn't done. Yeah. He's been pretty quiet about that.
Well, even in the Letterman thing, like he
didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah,
he kind of
Letterman asked him 3 times before he even said it.
Right.
Yeah,
with the joke, which wasn't even really that bad of a thing, but
I think he's slowly revealing it over time, because one of his recent stand-ups, he was actually talking about going to South Africa and like trying to understand, like, I guess what he liked there with apartheid when they were breaking down that system. He said the system was on trial rather than like the people. The people were just actors.
Yeah,
and if you always vilified other people, that you would you'd always be fighting because you were different from them. But if you saw them as part of the system and the system was corrupt, then you could figure out how to fix that. So I feel it's like the kind of thing, like whatever happened, whatever he was doing, like I feel like it's something he slowly reveals over the next
that
5-10 years
a genius.
Onward. Yeah,
that guy. Yeah, like his stand-up is like making large, massive political like points that make you think. Yeah. And you don't even know he's doing it until the end, and you're just like, "Oh, okay, that's what you were going with." Yeah. Like, he is a very impressive person. really is.
That's the impressive thing of like somebody who, I mean, he's clearly, whether or not like his performance and art is genius, which I think some people would certainly say, and maybe I would too, but like he's just an intelligent person who's interested in a lot of things. And there are a lot of people in the world who are like that, but it's very difficult to have somebody who is like that and then can tell a joke.
Yeah.
Like, well, yeah, it's like, and like he has an entire bit about kicking somebody in a pussy.
Right.
Which is like, like he will go to the lowest grade common denominator that everyone is just like, this is stupid, like dirty humor. But then also, and like, because he can get everyone's attention with that, can then tell this higher level story. And sometimes you have people who are very good at the kicking people in the P word part, who have orange hair and become president of the United States, but maybe not so good at the intellectual part to talk to other people. So yeah, spanning that to me is what kind of differentiates him as a human.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I did like that episode, him on the David Letterman thing, but I've seen a couple of the other ones and I didn't like him as much. I have very mixed feelings about David Letterman, and I guess probably everyone does, but like, I didn't ever like his talk show. But then when he interviewed Chappelle, I was like, oh, he's got some real questions. He really wants to have a conversation. And then I saw him do like Zach Galifianakis, and it seemed like the same talk show. Like he didn't care. He was kind of just like, let's just get on. I wanted to tell this story, so I'll tell this story now. I don't know, but. There's a couple.
He was very excited to talk to Chappelle. It seemed like he
was,
had done a
and
lot
he was
of
very
research
respectful. Yeah. Anyway,
I mean, I think the dude's he's got to be 75, 80. How old is he?
Yeah,
I think it's 70s.
I have no idea. He's got a great beard, though.
Yeah,
great beard.
He does have a pretty tremendous beard. My recommendation is beards. No. My recommendation this week has to do with, because we did that story on Hyperloop, and I believe I may have recommended this woman's stuff before.
I remember this.
Physics
you did,
gal.
but Jeff didn't pay attention when you did.
Yeah, but this specific, we'll link to this specific YouTube video where she does a ballistic ping pong test, and she demonstrates the concept of like having a vacuum tube. And so that's the concept of like in these hyperloops, these things are able to move fast because they have like no friction. And she fires ping pong balls through this like 20-foot PVC pipe where she creates a vacuum tube, and they leave at 450 kilometers per hour, something like that. Yeah. So, pretty fast. And there's just like a ton of like slow motion videos of these things like hitting people, and like her professor, the first time she saw the demonstration, her like physics professor in college like was taking ping pong balls to the gut, and like he would take off his shirt and show the bruises.
Jesus.
Yeah, but it's a pretty interesting description of the science behind why Hyperloop works.
So this just reminds me of some random thing. There's another YouTube channel called Smarter Every Day, and this guy built a supersonic baseball cannon, and it's kind of the same thing.
Ooh.
But he like built it in a machine shop with like it fires baseballs at 1,000 miles an hour, and it explodes
That's
them.
not good.
Like they hit a piece of metal, and they literally explode, and there's nothing left. So we'll link both of these in the show notes because they're both pretty cool. And I think she does a great job of explaining like how it all works. And then this one's just even somewhat crazier. I don't know. It's ridiculous. But yeah,
there's there are really interesting science videos on YouTube if you ever, and I'm not a science person, but like if you ever want to nerd out, the other ones that like, 'cause you just said baseball, I've watched them with my kid where like they have the idea of a corked baseball bat where this guy fills an aluminum bat, like he takes the cap off the end and fills it with bouncy balls.
Ooh.
And then like closes the cap up, and he is rocketing balls 600 feet. He's just like a fat guy off of a toss.
Jay Turner in fifth grade type.
Basically Jay Turner in fifth grade. Yeah.
Nice.
All right. That's the show.
Yeah. Shameless plugs. Mine is thebubbleboard.com. If you follow stocks at all, check it out. It's free. Thebubbleboard.com.
DWPWK.com. Check it out for all of our links to social media and YouTubes and whatnot?
Bookcasecoffee.com and DashyDash.com, the number one double D business in the restaurant space.
It's a great
most
tagline.
Profitable based on the last quarter.
That's true. Most profitable. I love it. All right, guys. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The Worst People We Know was recorded, edited, and produced in the Golden State, with a little bit of help from the Sunshine State.
The Garden
Sunshine
State. The Sunshine State, huh?
Gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for listening. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe and find us on Twitter at TWPWK. Thanks.
What's the one that all the Fox News people are getting mad at Twitter about and telling them not to unfollow them on Twitter, but to go follow them on this new
Parler.
Oh,
Parler?
Parler.
Yeah.
Parler.
I'm on it. I love it. It's great.
Is it good?
Are you on it?
I'm not
I was
on it.
thinking about getting on it. It seemed... I saw some crazy person's reply to some Trump thing about it, saying it was the number one app on the App Store, and I was like, that can't be right. I was like, oh Christ, it is.
Let's start and let's talk about that because I think it's kind of interesting anyway.
That's the greatest contribution that the show Bosch has made to our podcast.
It's a pretty great one. Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah,
the clapping
on the
thing.
TN2.
Yeah.
Oh, that came from Bosch? I thought it was
an episode.
So was he
Yeah,
a Navy SEAL?
He was hunting down these guys who were criminals who were on a Navy SEAL team.
Should we do a Bosch fan podcast? Maybe pivot into that.
I would watch it first.
Yeah. Is it too late? Now that it's been out for a while.
Should we do a Bosch fan podcast without watching it?
yeah. Flynn describes it to us. We're like, oh, okay, this is interesting.
Very nice.
Part of the reason I like to say bye is that the voice track looks like a penis.
Oh,
when you look at
I
it.
didn't know that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, I didn't actually notice it till 2 seconds ago. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Thanks for listening.